You take a sugar pill and your pain disappears. Your doctor never lied to you. Your brain did the work. And in the summer of 1518, that same wiring made an entire town dance itself toward death. It started with one woman. Her name was Frau Trophäa. She stepped into a narrow street in Strasbourg and began to dance. No music played. No festival had been announced. She simply moved, arms swinging, feet stamping, hour after hour, until her shoes filled with blood and she collapsed from exhaustion. The next morning, she stood up and did it again. Neighbors watched from windows. Some laughed, some prayed. None of them understood what they were looking at, because nothing like it had a name yet. Within a week, 34 people had joined her. Within a month, historians estimate the number climbed past 400. Some of them danced until their hearts gave out. City physicians recorded deaths, as many as 15 a day at the outbreak's peak, according to some contemporary accounts. This is not folklore. This happened in a real city, with real names, real death records, and a paper trail that still survives in the municipal archives of Strasbourg. Picture the street itself. Cobblestones slick with sweat. The rhythmic slap of bare feet that had long since worn through their shoes. Onlookers pressed into doorways, unsure whether to help, to pray, or to run. And at the center of it, ordinary bakers, mothers, and laborers, moving with no rhythm to guide them, and no will left to stop. So what actually caused it?
For centuries, the easy answer was mass hysteria, a vague phrase that explains nothing while sounding like it explains everything. But the real story is stranger, and it starts with what the city itself believed. Strasbourg in 1518 was not calm. Famine had gripped the region. Smallpox and syphilis moved through the population. Peasants were being crushed by debt, and a folk belief had taken root that a saint, Saint Vitus, could curse people with an uncontrollable urge to dance if they angered him. This wasn't a fringe superstition. It was civic knowledge, passed down through churches and taught in prayers. Everyone in that city carried the same fear in the back of their mind. Dance too wildly near a shrine, and the saint could curse you and your neighbors too.
Layer onto that a decade of failed harvests. Grain prices had tripled. Families were selling tools just to eat. Historians studying the period describe a population living under constant, grinding psychological pressure. The kind that doesn't cause a single breaking point, but slowly lowers the threshold for one. Strasbourg wasn't a city waiting for a miracle. It was a city waiting for a reason to break. And that reason didn't need to be rational. It only needed to be believed widely enough, by enough frightened people, at exactly the moment their bodies were already primed to fail. That's the part most retellings of this story miss. The dancing plague wasn't an isolated freak event dropped onto a healthy population. It was the final symptom of a city that had already been suffering for years, waiting for a story convincing enough to give that suffering a shape. Now hold that thought, because here is where the story turns from folklore
into neuroscience.
Historian John Waller, who spent years reconstructing the outbreak from Strasbourg's original death registers and physician notes, argued that the dancing plague was a real, physical event, driven entirely by belief. Waller didn't rely on rumor or legend. He worked from municipal ledgers, sermons, and the notes of a physician named Paracelsus, who happened to be practicing in the region during the outbreak and left behind some of the only first-hand medical descriptions of what he witnessed. Waller cross-referenced every account he could find, and the pattern held steady across all of them. This was not exaggeration. It was documented, witnessed, physical collapse, spreading through a population that already believed it was possible. Waller's research shows that in a population primed to expect a curse, extreme stress can trigger involuntary movement disorders, and once one person starts, the shared belief turns it contagious. Not through the air, through the mind.
This sounds impossible until you understand how deeply expectation can rewire the body. Not metaphorically, not as a figure of speech. Actual muscle contractions, actual exhaustion, actual death, produced by a belief the entire town shared without ever questioning it. And that brings us to the second half of this story, a phenomenon most people only know in its friendlier form. You've probably heard of the placebo effect. Someone takes a fake pill, believes it's real medicine, and their symptoms improve. Harvard researcher Ted Kaptchuk has spent decades studying exactly why this works, and his experiments reveal something uncomfortable. Belief alone can trigger measurable physical changes in the body. Lower pain, reduced inflammation, real dopamine release in the brain. The body doesn't always ask whether a threat or a cure is genuine. It only asks whether you believe it is.
In one of Kaptchuk's best-known trials, patients with irritable bowel syndrome were told plainly and honestly that the pills they were taking contained no active medicine at all. No deception, no trick, and they still improved, simply from the ritual of taking something and expecting relief. That single result upended decades of assumptions about what medicine even is. But the placebo effect has a darker twin. It's called the nocebo effect, and neuroscientist Fabrizio Benedetti has documented it in careful clinical detail. In his studies, patients told that a harmless treatment might cause pain often develop real pain, measurable on brain scans, not imagined, not faked. Expectation alone activates the same neural pathways as an actual injury. Tell the body it should hurt, and often enough, it will.
Benedetti's work goes further. In some experiments, simply telling a patient a sensation would intensify was enough to increase their brain's own pain signaling, independent of anything happening to their body. The threat wasn't physical. The belief was the injury. Now put both of these pieces next to Strasbourg in 1518. An entire population primed by fear. A culture that believed dancing curses were real and contagious. A body that, under extreme psychological stress, will often manifest that fear physically. One woman starts dancing. Everyone around her already believes the curse is possible. Their nervous systems do the rest. This is the moment the story stops being about the 16th century and starts being about you.
because you already know what it feels like to be handed a fear you didn't ask for. A headline, a rumor at work, a stranger online telling you something in your body might be wrong. You don't need a saint's curse to feel it. You just need a belief strong enough, repeated by enough people around you, and your body starts listening.
Have you ever noticed your own chest tighten right after someone told you they were worried about you? That's not weakness. That's the same mechanism that moved 400 people through the streets of Strasbourg. Modern psychologists sometimes call this phenomenon mass psychogenic illness, and it hasn't disappeared. Waller himself has pointed to smaller, modern echoes, school outbreaks of unexplained symptoms that spread not through infection, but through shared belief and proximity. The wiring hasn't changed in 500 years. Only the shrines have. Think about how a single viral post can convince thousands of people they're suddenly feeling a symptom they read about an hour earlier. Think about how a crowded room can shift its entire mood because one person walked in visibly anxious. None of that requires a virus. It only requires attention, proximity, and a shared story everyone in the room has quietly agreed to believe.
So what actually stopped the Strasbourg outbreak? The city's own solution made it worse before it made it better. Physicians at the time believed the dancers needed to dance it out, so the city built stages, hired musicians, and encouraged the plague to run its course in public. It didn't calm anyone. It amplified the belief. Watching dozens of people dance uncontrollably in the town square only confirmed to everyone watching that the curse was real and spreading. City records describe guild halls converted into makeshift dance floors. Musicians paid out of civic funds to keep the rhythm going, on the theory that exhaustion would finally break the curse. Instead, more residents joined every day, drawn in by the spectacle itself. The cure the authorities designed was, without anyone realizing it, an advertisement for the very belief that was killing people.
The outbreak didn't slow until authorities changed strategy entirely, banning public dancing, removing the musicians, and instead marching the afflicted to a shrine dedicated to Saint Vitus to be cured. Belief had caused it. A different belief, deliberately constructed, is what finally ended it. Think about that for a moment. The cure wasn't medicine. It was a new story replacing the old one. That's not a quirk of the 16th century. That's how belief still operates inside every human body walking around today. Kapchuk's modern placebo trials work for the exact same reason the St. Vitus shrine worked in 1518. Because the mind doesn't heal or harm based on what's objectively true. It responds to what it's convinced is true. This is why the placebo effect isn't a trick doctors use on gullible patients. It's a real biological lever, one so powerful that entire cities have danced themselves toward death because of it, and so powerful that modern medicine now studies it seriously instead of dismissing it.
Consider what that means for how you experience an ordinary day. A doctor's rushed tone before a diagnosis. A friend's offhand comment about how tired you look. A warning label read one time too many. None of these are neutral. Each one plants a small seed of expectation, and your body, quietly and without asking permission, often grows exactly what was planted. You are not immune to this. No one is. Your nervous system is still running the same 800-year-old software that moved Frau Trophea into that street.
The only difference between her and you is what your century has taught you to fear, and what it's taught you to believe might heal you. That's worth sitting with for a moment. The dancers of Strasbourg didn't choose their fate any more than you choose to flinch at bad news. Their bodies were simply doing what bodies have always done, translating belief into motion, fear into symptom, story into flesh.
So the next time your body reacts before your mind has caught up, a wave of dread from a headline, a symptom that appears right after someone mentions it might, remember Strasbourg. Remember that belief alone once moved hundreds of human bodies past exhaustion and into death, and that belief alone, redirected, was the only thing that ever stopped it. You didn't take a sugar pill today, but somewhere your body is already listening to a story you haven't noticed you're telling it. And the only real question left is which story you'll choose to let it hear next.